Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be talking about bot lane combinations and synergies that will help you learn how to combine different AD carries with different supports to maximize your win percentage in solo queue. So I already do have a full guide about laning, so if you want to check that out, I have that right here. That'll talk a lot about cooldown management, different power spikes, itemization, vision control, how to communicate effectively. All of that's already covered in this guide. And then I have another guide about a similar topic that is composition guides. This is talking about compositions in general. It's talking about different roles, scaling, different popular strategies for winning, why composition matters, what are some good qualities of just good solo queue champions as a counter pick guide, so which champion counters which other champion. So I have guides similar to this bot lane one, but I've never done one that just goes through and talks specifically about which AD carries are good with which supports. So that's what we're going to be focusing on in this video. And there's a lot of other great stuff on the channel. If you're new to the channel, you haven't checked out much of the content yet, we have all sorts of guides all over the place. We have coaching videos. I do streaming every night from 9:30 p.m. to usually about 2 a.m., sometimes a little bit longer. So we do in-depth tier lists, patch notes, top 5 for each role, and then we have topical guides like best one-trick champion, discussions of the new 2019 ranked season, split pushing guide, scaling guide, laning guide, 107 coaching sessions. So we have a ton of stuff on the channel. In-depth champion guides, so in-depth for Sona, Tom Kench, Lulu, Zillion. And these are true in-depth guides. These aren't the little 7-minute clickbait guides that you'll find out there that will tell you basically what the ability does and that you should win with that champion. You know, this is going to talk through different items, runes, really in-depth about the abilities and how to use them in different situations. So there's a lot of really good depth that you don't find elsewhere on YouTube, on the channel. So be sure to check all that out. But let's go ahead and get in here. So the key question when you're picking a champion, and we're going to focus mostly on just the bot lane, like which champions counter which other champions, but you need to be thinking, what does your team need to win the game? So sometimes you might have to sacrifice the ideal composition bottom in order to balance out your overall composition as a team. So for example, if you have 4 AD champions on your team and you don't want to dodge that game, then you're probably going to have to pick an AP champion to be viable if they have 2 tanks on their team. So, you know, if you have top lane Camille, mid lane Yasuo, jungle Kha'Zix, and bot lane Caitlyn, then you might have to pick an AP champion. So you might have to pick something like a Zyra or a Brand, even though, you know, that may not be the best champion with whoever you picked, right? So let's say that you picked, they have a Twitch. You have a Twitch on your team. Zyra is usually not that great with Twitch because he needs more protection than that, and he can't really match your early game pressure, which we'll talk about here in a second. But because your team needs AP, then you're going to have to pick that. Or maybe you have something that's very aggressive early, like maybe you have a Jhin, but they have a lot of really hard engage. So maybe they have like a Zac specifically, maybe they have a Lee Sin, and these other kinds of gap closer hard engaged champions. You might need to pick Janna, even though Janna isn't the best with Jhin because she doesn't put out a lot of early pressure. She doesn't have a lot of CC to chain together with his W, and she really wants to get Ardent Sensor, and he doesn't scale as well with Ardent Sensor as other champions. So it doesn't make sense in terms of like Janna with Jhin, but you might have to have it because your team is very vulnerable to those hard engages from Zac. So you have to think more broadly about what's going on in your specific game. Also, just what you're comfortable with as well. You know, if you don't have any experience whatsoever on Janna, then you wouldn't want to pick Janna just to counter that, right? You would want to pick something that you're comfortable with. Now, I have entire other videos about, you know, what you should one-trick, should you one-trick, specialize, all that stuff. So I'm not going to go into that here. I will say it's good to try to learn champions that are going to be good in a bunch of different metas. Okay, but I'll leave it at that. Janna is a good one. But you can watch the one-trick video if you want to know more about that. So anyways, we're going to be focusing just on bottom, but just be aware that whatever I say in here could change in-game depending on whatever else is going on. So even though you might have the perfect champion with your AD carry bot lane, you might get the perfect match. It might not be perfect for the one specific game that you're going to go into. Another caveat here is I can't cover every single AD carry and every single support and keep this video under 3 hours because there's just too many of them, especially on the support side. So I had to leave out some supports that I know people will be sad about. Wasn't able to talk about Morgana, who I know is very popular right now. Wasn't able to talk about Sona, who is always pretty popular. But I tried to, in selecting which supports and AD carries I included, to do a combination of champions that are very popular. They're played a lot, both now and usually in past patches and probably in future patches will be fairly popular champions. Then also things that are really powerful that you should be trying to learn, that you should be trying to work around. So it's a combination of that. So it doesn't have all of the power picks right now. It doesn't have all of the most popular picks, but I tried to find some middle ground there to find champions that historically have been powerful and popular and will probably continue to be so moving forward into the future. Okay, so important questions to ask yourself when you're thinking about composition is, what does your team need? Like I just mentioned, do you need an AP champion? Do you need a disengaged champion? Do you need some kind of hard CC to deal with their Master Yi? It's important to think about that overall. Then, which team has the winning lane? So if they have a lineup that's going to be the winning team almost no matter what bot lane, sometimes you just need to pick for the mid game or just pick to scale. So for example, if they pick something like a Draven Leona bot lane and your AD carry picks Ezreal, there's no way you're ever winning that lane. It doesn't matter which support you pick. Ezreal is just too weak early game to deal with Draven and Leona, so you're just going to want to probably take a defensive lane position and just pick something that scales. So you just probably pick something like Lulu and Janna, and you'll probably have to win around someone else on your team. So if your team has a Yasuo mid, you can be like, well, we're pretty much doomed bottom, so I'm just going to pick Lulu, and then that way in the mid game, I can play around Yasuo and maybe win the game that way. Because there's sometimes it's just not going to happen. Or maybe you're looking at op.gg, doing your research like you should before the game just to see who's playing what, and let's say that your mid laner and your top laner are on their best hard carry champions. Maybe you have like a mid lane Azir that's got 2,000 games, and maybe you have a top lane Camille that has 1,000 games, and they're both like 57%. And you've got a jungler who's just playing like an okay, decent jungle. Then you have an auto-filled AD carry bot who's playing, I don't know, Sivir or something, and they have like a 20% win rate on Sivir. You might want to play that game anyways because your solo lanes are pretty strong, but you might just say, hey, I'm not expecting a lot of fireworks down here, so I might as well just pick something that's going to scale and try to play around the Azir or try to play around the Camille. And so you might pick a Janna or a Lulu in that situation, even though maybe that wouldn't be the best pick if you pick Janna with Sivir. Janna's okay with almost anybody, but it's important to think about that when you're playing. Can you actually win that lane? If you pick a certain support, is your composition capable of winning that lane, or is it pretty much a foregone conclusion that you're going to lose that lane and you should just lose it gracefully and just try to play safe, don't die, and try to play around somebody else later on? Or maybe you have a really high scaling AD carry like a Twitch, but they have something that's really high pressure like Zyra Draven. You might just say, okay, I'm just going to pick a healer and just try to scale with this Twitch because we're going to lose the lane. There's just no way. So I'm just going to pick Nami or Soraka or something like that and just try to heal through it. Okay, so what does your team composition need? Which team has the winning lane? What is the goal of your lane? So that is similar, is what are you trying to accomplish? Do you need to be powerful early? Do you need to chill early? And this can change depending on what the other lanes are doing as well. So both during the game and before the game. So if you have a lot of power in your other lanes, you just have like a hyperscaling champion top lane and mid lane and jungle, you may not need to do anything heroic bot lane. If you've got Ezreal bot and then you have, the Kha'Zix jungle, Ryze mid, and Fiora top, you may not need to do anything heroic with Ezreal. Maybe it's fine just to farm it off. Because why risk it? You have so much damage in your other lanes. And especially if they have a really dangerous lane, bot lane, or you're getting camped or something, there's just no reason to take on that risk. So you don't always have to be hyper aggressive all the time. Because I get this sometimes. I've got this in the past where, if you're playing something like Nami bot lane and they have, a Soraka Caitlyn or something like that, then sometimes you just can't be as aggressive as you need to be because they're either going to heal through it, or maybe the jungler's camping you, or maybe your AD carry just doesn't follow up on anything. I mean, if you're trying to be aggressive, if you're trying to make trades, when you're Nami with your W or your Lulu and you EQ combo and auto them and take them to like half health, and then your AD carry just sits there and watches you, and then the enemy trades back half of your health, you might need to say, okay, well, this guy's not going to follow up, or girl, is not going to follow up on what I'm doing, so I'm going to have to change my tactics and chill. Like, maybe that's not the ideal way we should play this lane. Maybe we should be aggressive, but it's a two-person lane, so if your AD carry's not on board with that, if they don't get it, or they just don't feel comfortable, maybe they're auto-filled, maybe they don't know the champion well, maybe they're distracted by something, maybe they're having a conversation with their roommate and they're just on autopilot, then you have to adjust your tactics. So it's important to come in with a goal, thinking about, okay, does our lane really need to go hard to win this, or can we be neutral, or should we be defensive? It's important to think about what you need to accomplish there. How do you want to position the lane? So I talk about this in the laning guide. There are 3 basic positions to a lane, and you need to think about your champions, your composition, the enemy composition, and sort of what the jungler is doing, and what their jungler is doing, and what their mid laner is doing, and what your jungler is doing to a certain extent as well. But the easiest thing to think about is this going to be a winning lane or not, and how is it going to win? So I think the best position at most elos is to assume the forward position. So let's say that your blue side, you want to have them back into their tower like this. And then the minions are just like right here. Okay, getting shot at by the tower. So this is the best position most of the time. It depends on the comp. We'll talk about which champions are good in which different positions. But this is what I'm going to describe in this video as a forward position. So you're playing forward. You are actively trying to harass them under tower. You're denying them CS because of the tower, and you're getting chip damage on the tower. This also allows you to... opens up the map a little bit more. It'll allow you to roam. So if you want to roam middle, it allows you to get deeper vision. So it allows you to ward here and here as long as your AD carry doesn't get caught. Because you're not going to be missing as much CS when that happens, because they're busy under the tower cleaning up their CS. Because one thing that's always important to keep in mind is when you go ward or when you roam, you are losing experience most of the time. You're losing potential coins, and your AD carry is at risk. And so this, your AD carry should be safer because there's all these minions here, and if they engage on him or her, then they're going to miss CS, and they're going to take damage from the minions. So that's something important to think about, and like I said, you're going to miss less CS. So this allows you to run up, ward some of this stuff. It allows you to rotate and help your jungler take a dragon if they're trying to sneak a dragon. It allows you to rotate over to mid. If you have mobility boots in your Alistar or something, you can make a roam up to mid. So it allows a lot of opportunities for harassment and for vision control and roaming when you're in this position. You can help your jungler invade. So if your jungler is trying to come in and maybe take their blue buff, if you are in this forward position, then you can actually come over here and help them with this invade. All right. Whereas these people, they could help, but if they do help, once again, they're going to be paying a price. They're going to be paying the minions. So pretty much this just forces them to stick here. It pins them against the tower, and they can't do anything else on the map. All right. This is also really good for dives. So this is kind of a higher elo thing, but the jungler could come down if you have good vision and depending on your team comp, and come in here and dive this at some point. You know, not like level 3 or something, but when you're all like level 6, you could come in here and dive this potentially. So it opens up a dive, opens up your roaming possibilities, denies them CS. They'll probably miss some CS under tower, allows you to get chip damage on the tower, allows you to hit them with skill shots. It's all good. In the abstract, without thinking about the enemy jungler, it's all good. Of course, the major danger from this is that you are vulnerable when you do this, right? So, you know, the enemy jungler can easily come down here and gank you this way. They can wrap all the way around and gank you this way, which is becoming more popular. Mid laner can come down if they're pushed in. So it's not always the best decision to do this, but in many situations, depending on the team comps, if you have a forward champion, someone who pushes and has a lot of lane control, then this is a really good choice. You just have to make sure you have this warded, and you have to keep a very vigilant eye on mid lane and make sure they don't rotate. If mid is losing, you need to be very careful, especially if it's a roaming mid, if it's like a Fizz or certainly something like a Twisted Fate or a Talia. You need to be very careful if they're in this position. So if the mid lane is pushing your mid lane in, you need to watch out, especially if your own mid laner is not warding, and especially if your jungler is not on this side of the map. So if your jungler is just like camping top or something, you know, they're up here, you need to be very careful because they can't back you up. Whereas if your jungler is like down here or something doing their golems, then you can push up a little bit because you know if a jungler comes, you might be able to back out, and if their jungler comes, then your jungler could, in theory, come over and help. Okay, so that's position number 1, forward position. All right, so I think that's the default best position in solo queue if you have good map awareness, if you can watch your mini map and you know, adjust accordingly and not get caught and killed from ganks. That's a lot of ifs, but that is the ideal good position most of the time. I think that's what you should strive for with a lot of the matchups. Okay, this is a neutral position. So this is what I'll call neutral as we go through. So in this position, you're not trying to push it, and you're also not allowing them to push you in. So you're matching their push power. This is what you'll see at a lot of higher elos. This is neutral because you can probably in most situations get back to your tower if you get ganked. So if they wrap around through here, there's a decent chance you're going to be able to get back to your tower before they kill you. But then also you can threaten them. So you can threaten to all in and kill them. One thing about the forward position up here is you can't, unless you're specifically trying to dive, you can't all in and kill. This is just for poking and incremental advantage. It's not for all-in kills. So in the neutral position, this is best for all-in. So if you hit a skill shot here with a Zyra or a Leona or something like that, or a Thresh, there's a decent chance that you can either kill them or force summoners before they get back to their tower. Right? This also allows your jungler to come in and gank somewhat without risking a dive. So here they can gank, they can dive if they want to, but here they can probably gank without a dive. Okay, and this is a good place to bait as well. If your jungler's here and you're in this position, it's a good place to bait. Now, conversely, they can also engage on you and kill you a lot easier because they're not pinned in their tower as much. And you're not going to be able to get as deep a vision because you're going to be pinned here in the lane. So if you try to roam here, then they're going to push you in a tower and you're going to miss CS. You're going to miss a lot of experience, and they could potentially kill your AD carry a lot easier because they don't have to worry about missing minions to the tower. So it's a lot harder to keep good vision control, so you're going to have to get shallow vision if you're here. You know, you might be able to ward like the Dragon Pit, you might be able to ward like right here, but you're not going to be able to get this nice deep vision to keep eyes on the jungler in these places. Isn't that right, dear?
You don't notice the 12 I've been running for a long time.
No. So yeah, it's a neutral position. It opens you up to engages, but it allows you to engage on the enemy. It keeps you safer from ganks. And really you want to take this position if you think your jungler is going to come down and fight early, or if you are an all-in champion. So if you're a Zyra, Leona, something like that. Because Leona can't do anything if you're pushed forward in this position. She can dive, I suppose, in certain circumstances, but that can be pretty dangerous. But you're not going to be able to go for those all-in kills as easily if you force them into a defensive position by going forward. Okay, so that's kind of the neutral position. And then the position that you probably don't want to be in, but with some matchups you might be forced to be in, is the defensive position. So this is where you are back under your tower, and you know, the enemy is here. So pretty much it's just the inverse of whenever you're in the forward position. Now whenever you were in the forward position, now they are. So they get all of those benefits and risks with this. Right, so this is where you're just trying to farm here. This is where you might find yourself if you're playing something like Twitch or a Vayne or something like that that just does not have very good wave clear early and can't really fight that well early on. So it's going to be really hard to get any kind of vision here. You're opening yourself up to getting dove because the only vision you're going to get is in this tri-bush. If they have a really dominant position, they're going to deny you vision of the tri-bush, and you might have to ward over this wall instead. This is a decent place if your jungler can get here. You know, if your jungler can come down and gank, but it's going to be hard for you to control this bush. So if they do manage to get around and get through the vision, then they can get a really good gank and some kills. But, you know, that's really dependent on the jungler doing that. A lot of junglers, it depends on your elo, but they're not going to be macroing that well. They're not going to come down here as often. They might. It depends on what's going on. But if you're a champion who's getting pushed in easily, there's a pretty good chance you don't have a lot of kill pressure, right, Rory? There's a pretty good chance you don't have a lot of kill pressure. You're going to be Ezreal, you're going to be Twitch, something like that. So they may not want to come bottom because they're afraid they may not convert kills. Is that right? Sometimes my daughter makes a little cameo on the channel. She just woke up. She just woke up. Is that right, Lori?
Can you wave?
Can you wave, Lori? Can you clap?
Can you clap?
Can you clap, Lori?
Can you clap? Yes! Good job! 2 claps.
2 claps, okay.
That's all you people get.
That's all you get.
That's all you get.
Anyways, so yeah, you don't want to be in this position most of the time. Yes, it is good if your jungler can come down and get ganks on this, but your AD carry is going to be losing CS to tower. They're going to be harassing you under tower. They're going to be getting incremental damage on your tower. They can get into your bushes. The jungler can get into your bushes because you're not going to be able to keep vision there probably if they lock you out with control wards. This is just a bad position. They can take Dragon. You're going to have a hard time keeping vision on it or contesting it if you're pushed in. If they have an Alistar or Leona or something, they can go roam middle because you're not going to have vision. So this is a really, really bad position most of the time. So yes, it can be good if your jungler is able to get around their vision and come down bottom, or if you can keep a ward up here and your top lane can teleport, or your Talia roams down or something like that. This can be good, but most of the time this is bad. If you look at most of your games, you go back and watch them, and you see if you played the lane in this position, you probably lost at least 60% of your games, I would say. But yeah, this is a really rough position to be in, but some champions have to do it, and it's actually good to do it. Something like a Twitch or a Vayne, like I said before, because they're so bad in the early game, might have to adopt this position, at least to start. Okay, and then just think, does your champion, is it versatile? So if you're not sure about, if you're not sure whether you're going to win the lane or lose the lane, or you are an early pick, I'll talk about that some with the supports, but like you're a first or a second pick, just champions that are good with all sorts of different, that are versatile in all sorts of different game states with all sorts of different partners, then, you know, that might be something that you need. So for example, if your first pick, you know, in theory, even if your AD carry is hovering something like Draven, you may not necessarily want to pick Zyra because you have no intel about the enemy team. So if they pick a lot of assassins, if they pick like, you know, Fizz, Kha'Zix, like Leona, bot lane, Jhin, or something like that on their team, if they have all of this like super high damage champions, then it's going to be really rough. So you may not be able to pick the ideal pairing if you're an early pick because you may not have enough visibility, and certain champions are really dangerous compared to others. So we'll talk about that some, like who's a good blind pick. But yeah, picking something, especially if you're an early pick that is adjustable, that's good in a bunch of different compositions, is usually a pretty good option. So that's something else to consider when you're picking your champ. So just think about, what does your composition need? Which team has the winning lane? What is the goal of your lane? Are you trying to, where are you trying to position the lane? Forward, neutral, back? What do you need? Do you need to win hard? Is it okay to go even in scale? Are you going to lose? Do you need to figure out just how to minimize your losses so your other lanes can carry you and you can play around that? How are you going to adjust? Okay, so here's kind of the top 10 AD carries. And remember, top 10 doesn't necessarily mean the best. It doesn't necessarily mean the most popular. It's just ones that I think over time are a blend of strong and popular. Okay, so Caitlyn's top of the list. She's almost always relevant in most metas. Oh, and my scale, I didn't put it on here. 1 being like one of the weakest champions at that particular metric, and then 5 being one of the strongest champions at that metric, and then just sort of rating it from there. So 1 being weakest, 5 being strongest. And then I have sort of this 5-point metric for them. I talk about the preferred lane position, then I talk about the top 3 supports. Now, there are a lot of supports that are good with a lot of these champions. But we're just going to kind of move through these just so you get an idea about what each champion is trying to do. I'll talk about sort of what their mission is in games as well. I didn't write that down, but there's enough writing on this already. If you want to access this Google Doc as well, you can find the link in the description and timestamps. I forgot to mention that early. So if you want to jump around and just see the support section, or you just want to jump to a certain AD carry or a certain support, then you can do that as well in the video. I always put timestamps and the Google Doc. I do a Google Doc like this for every guide, every video on the channel. Then I also have timestamps. Okay, so lane pressure is kind of the hardest one to define. This is some combination of wave clear, siege, zone, and poke. So it just pretty much means that they're able to push the lane into that forward position and get an advantage. That's pretty much what lane pressure is. That's different from kill threat. Kill threat means how likely are you to actually kill the enemy in lane. So if someone was betting on, are you going to get a kill in lane, how likely are you to do that? So a lot of this is burst damage, especially early on in the game. Okay, so for example, Caitlyn has a lot of lane pressure because she can push in. She has wave clear, really good zone control, really good poke, and really good siege. But her kill threat is relatively low. Not low, but like neutral, depending on the matchup. She doesn't do an astronomical amount of damage early, but she does have really good combination. So if like Morgana lands a bind and then Caitlyn traps her, then yeah, she can kill somebody. So it's neutral. It's similar to most other AD carries. Maybe even, you could put that at a 4 if you wanted to. And these numbers are variable. Maybe you think her kill threat's a 4 instead of a 3. That's fine. I'm just giving you a general idea about the champion here. So, lane pressure high. She pushes really well. Kill threat relatively low. If she's just auto-attacking, she's probably not going to kill somebody outright. Her burst damage is low, but she does have that good poke. If she does land a trap combo on somebody and chain it with your support CC, then you can definitely get some kills. So that's why it's a 3 and not like a 2. Her safety's a 4. Traps should give her pretty good zone control. If she's always attacking at max range, that should keep her relatively safe from any sort of trade backs. And then she has her net, of course, to help her get out as well. So pretty good safety, so I'll put her at a 4. Scaling is relatively low. She's very strong early, but if you're talking about most other AD carries, if she just gets into an auto attack war with somebody, like a Vayne rolls up and they both have 3 items, Vayne's probably going to kill her, Kai'Sa's going to kill her, Twitch is going to kill her. A lot of other champions are going to kill her because she doesn't have any sort of AD steroids on her auto attacks, and she doesn't have any attack speed steroids. She's all about those combos with her traps and net, so she can do pretty decent burst damage in the right situations later. But she's not going to sit there and auto-attack somebody down and kill him later on in the game, because she has some of the slowest auto-attack speeds in the game. Okay, so her scaling's low, and her reliability is a 3, and reliability is a stat that also encompasses many things, kind of like lane pressure. It is, you can think about it as the difficulty level. So how easy is the champion to play? The easier it is, the more reliable it is, so the higher the rating. But then also just, it could depend on your team as well. So if your team doesn't follow up with what that champion's trying to do, then it's not reliable. Or maybe you really require a large snowball early on to get ahead, or you're going to lose. So that would make a champion a lot less reliable too, if you have to do very well in the early game in order to function in the late game. So reliability is just, and how many skill shots a champion has as well. I mean, that goes into difficulty. But reliability is basically how often is this champion going to play at an optimal level most of the time with most players. All right, so Caitlyn's kind of in the middle ground because she can auto, she can do her thing and just push people in just by spamming Qs and autoing. But there's a big difference in Caitlyn's who use those traps and nets properly and know how to execute her combo. So when someone lands on a trap, it's not just you land an auto attack and that's it whenever possible. You are autoing net, auto Q. So you're getting that full suite of rotations on somebody when you're Caitlyn. And that's a bit harder to do. There's a very big difference between an okay Caitlyn and a great Caitlyn, but not to the extent as some of the other champions out there that are even harder to play. So she's kind of sort of reliable. She's kind of mid-range. So she can do her thing most of the time, but there's definitely a difference between good and bad Caitlyn's. Okay, so her preferred lane position is forward. She wants to push in. She wants to pressure, drop her traps around the tower, and take towers early, and then just rotate around and take a bunch of other towers. That's her whole thing. Ideally, she does not want to fight all in early on. She just wants to poke, push people out of lane, get those towers, apply that lane pressure. So that's her thing. So you want to pair her together with other people that can do similar things. So Zyra, for example, applies a ton of lane pressure early, can help her poke under tower. Zyra also has 575 attack range, so it's really easy to hit that tower. And Zyra's damage, in case it does go to late game, Zyra's extra damage does help make up for Caitlyn's relatively low amount of damage scaling compared to some other AD carries. So Zyra has the range, she has the early game pressure, early game poke, and she applies that extra little bit of damage just in case you can't close out the game as early as Caitlyn would like. Nami's another good choice. Lots of great pressure, kind of the queen of trading early on. She's got that heal just in case you take a couple of bad trades. She has a long auto attack range too of 550, so she can apply damage to towers. And she has pretty good disengage. So if they do try to engage on you, then she's got her wave, she's got her bubble. She can slow people with her E. So she has pretty good disengage and great pressure early on. Janna's another classic one. Once again, long auto attack range. And she has that safety where you can pressure. And then if you're afraid you're going to get ganked, then Janna can get you out of that situation better than almost anybody. She's got that extra speed when you're trying to run away. She's got the tornado to disrupt people. She's got the ult to disrupt people. And she adds in that extra little bit of damage as well with her shield later on that Caitlyn might be missing because it gives all that extra AD. The AD that she applies with her shield also applies on auto attacks, and it also scales with Caitlyn's headshot. So that helps her take towers a lot faster. It helps her do a lot more damage when she does get those trap combos. So Janna's classically a very good pick with Caitlyn as well. Because the way that you beat Caitlyn is you hard engage onto her. So you can't just sit there and try to poke with her because she's going to zone you out with traps. I mean, we all know kind of how it can feel helpless when she's rolling up and just drops that trap line and you're trying to siege her late game, or you're trying to stop her from sieging you late game. The only way you can do it is you have really hard engage to get into her face and don't let her poke. Don't let her use her traps. And Janna's good at stopping that. So these are probably the three best ones. Now, someone else that's really good is Morgana. I just didn't list Morgana as a support in this patch. Morgana's really good with her. Karma's really good with her. Morg can push early with her W. The Black Shield helps prevent people from getting on Caitlyn later. And then if you do land your bind, that's a free trap for Caitlyn. So that's a lot of damage early on. So Morgana is another champion that's extremely good with Caitlyn. She almost made the cut for my top 10, but she historically has not played very much, which why I didn't put her on here. She's kind of hot right now with certain comps, and she can be good. But once again, I tried to pick historical data here, sort of in the future, or in the past, and then also moving forward. So yeah, Morg's a good one. Karma's another classically pretty good one. She can push the lane really well with her Qs. She can harass on her tower, and she has similar safety features to Janna. She doesn't scale quite as hard. She doesn't put AD on the AD carry with her shield, and she's kind of more of she's become more of a team fighter champion rather than. She is still good at pushing. I mean, Karma is very similar to Janna. Janna just scales better than Karma does right now after all the numerous nerfs to Karma. So if you want to play something that has even more pressure, if you want to double down on that pressure early and play Karma and just sacrifice a little bit of scaling later, if that's what your team comp wants, if you want to really make sure you're going to close it out early, Karma could be a good choice. Okay, Draven. Draven's another really popular one. He is one of the best one-trick champions out there. He is super aggressive early on, so he does apply a lot of lane pressure. He can push in. He doesn't have super great wave clear, but he has a lot of threat. People have to back up and respect him most of the time, so he's going to get to push them into that forward position if he wants to. He kind of has to push. So one of the problems with Draven at really high elo is you have to push in with him because you have to keep catching your axes. And they know where the axes are going to land, so it makes it relatively easy to know where he's going to be in terms of hitting him with skill shots or like being aware of like where you can trade back on him if you're paying attention. So it forces him into a forward position a lot of time, and he's a lot more predictable than other AD carries, and he doesn't have a lot of escapes. So that's kind of what's bad about him. What's good about him is he just does a metric ton of damage. He catches people off guard all the time, especially with this new Conquer build that everyone's building on him. It does a ton of damage. He has very, very high kill threat. He's the highest kill threat AD carry of anybody in lane. It is very probable that he's going to get a kill in lane, in most lanes, except for the safest ones. Or if your support is just AFK in a bush or something, it's highly probable he's going to get a kill, and that's exactly what he wants. His game plan is to pressure early, get those kills, snowball out of control. He doesn't siege quite as well as Caitlyn does, but because of his mere presence, his mere power, then he's able to push in and try to get those kills. So he has a ton of lane pressure, a ton of kill threat. He's one of the best, you know, if you were a booster or if you wanted to one-trick somebody, Draven would be your man. He's not safe at all. All he has is his stand aside, really, and he can kind of speed up with his W and try to run away, but he doesn't have, like, the net for Caitlyn. He doesn't have the same kind of zone control as Caitlyn does. Usually he just has to fight his way out of situations, so if people come at him, if he's getting ganked, he just tries to kill people. And that's what he should do most of the time. As far as scaling, he actually does scale really high. If you look at his stats, you know, his Q basically ends up doing double damage It can critical strike. It does apply lifesteal. So he just ends up doing an astronomical amount of damage because it modifies his auto attack, I believe. It's not on hit, it's auto. Let me see. I may not be 100% about that, but I know that his Q has insane scaling and does a ton of damage. Next basic attack in 5 seconds to deal bonus physical damage. Yes. That's bonus AD. So it's not on hit. That's the important thing here. So that means that it can critical strike. Yeah, so it does 55 and then 105% of your bonus AD. And that's bonus physical damage. That means your normal attack. So if you have like 100 AD and you have this maxed out, right, Rory? If you have this maxed out, this would be 105 plus 55, right? So that's 160 plus your base 100. That's 260. And then if you critical strike, that's 520. And then if you have, you know, Infinity Edge, that's going to be another bit. So it's going to be, you know, somewhere close to 600 damage just off of 100 AD. So this is why he does just a ton of damage. Oh, it's not even... Yeah, it is Spinning Axe. I thought it was... Sorry. So not there. Yes. Ton of damage. He basically walks into lane with a free BF sword. I've talked about this in past Draven videos, but he basically comes into lane up 1,300 gold on the enemy bot laners. That's why he has so much pressure early on. So yeah, tons of damage, really nice scaling, and that scaling still goes. So he does a lot early, but that percentage doesn't change. The more AD you get, the more he does. So in the mid to late game, he can almost literally one-shot or two-shot people. Squishies, and there's a lot of squishies running around with assassins. So yeah, he's not as safe, but sometimes the best safety is just kill the other person. And that's the Draven philosophy. You got a Kha'Zix running at your face, just auto attack him, flash, auto attack him again, he's dead. All right, solved. So that's kind of the Draven philosophy. And so that's why you find him building things just raw AD. Like he almost always starts with either a Death's Dance or a Bloodthirster. It just goes for an Infinity Edge, a lot of raw attack damage stuff. So usually he goes for 2 big AD items early on. You can go for the, you know, the 2 attack speed items if you want. You know, you can go for the Shiv, Rapid Fire Cannon, Infinity Edge build if you want. But I think that most people, because he gains so much from lifesteal, because his Q lifesteals, will almost always go something like maybe, I don't know, Death's Dance, Infinity Edge, and then start getting your attack speed items. Anyway, so Draven's very good. His ideal position is neutral because that allows him to run people down and kill them when the support lands a crowd control. But he's okay in the forward position too. He's almost always going to end up in a forward position, pushing in a tower because he has to constantly attack and catch his axes. But he can harass really well under tower too. Just landing those 1 auto attacks every now and then whenever they try to CS under tower adds up a lot over time. The problem with that is he's very dangerous if you do that. So if you want to double down on the kill threat in lane, you could run Alistar. Does a lot of damage early, really reliable, hard engage. They're probably going to die if Alistar goes in on him. Nami's another person to kind of balance him out, adds in really good trading early on, can heal him through lane if he takes a little bit of poke damage, and can help him run people down with the E on him for that slow ability. If you ever land a bubble, they're probably dead as well. Against Draven, or they're using their summoners. And then Zyra, similar, pushes if you want to double down on the push and poke early on, and then she has a ton of damage too. So you can definitely get those kills, right, Rory? You can get the kills.
Poke.
That's right.
Okay.
Next champion, we've got Ezreal. We're going to speed this up, so I really want to try to keep this to about an hour or less. I'm really trying to make these guides a little bit shorter, but I still want them to be thorough. I don't want to do the 7-minute all caps clickbait guides. I want to do the real deal. Okay, so Ezreal has virtually no lane pressure early on. He gets a tier first item. They nerfed his Q damage a lot. He doesn't take any sort of damage runes, or he doesn't take a lot of the big damage runes early on. You know, he's not going to take Conquer. He's not going to take, you know, like Comet or anything like that. So he's going to take Klepto, so he just kind of wants to farm off. So he has the lowest of any major AD carry I can think of in terms of early lane pressure. He can't push very well. He doesn't have good wave clear until he gets Iceborne Gauntlet. Even then, it's still shaky. He just does not do a lot early on in lane most of the time, unless you're building him like AP Ezreal or something like that. He's not going to do a lot. His kill threat, you know, if someone lands a CC and he gets a full combo on him, you know, if he gets auto Q, E auto Q or something like that, he can kill people, but his kill threat is pretty low. His push is pretty low. He almost always gets pushed into the defensive position in lane, unless you have a really aggressive support that pushes really heavily, like a Karma or a Zyra. Karma Ezreal used to be very popular because then you could push him in a tower and just poke him. It used to be the push and poke. I think that was 2016, maybe early 2017. That was a really hot combination. The old push poke lane before Karma got nerfed a lot. But yeah, so you can still go for the push and poke, but realistically, with just a random solo queue support, you're probably going to be pushing your tower playing defensively a lot of the time. He is probably the safest AD carry, though. Both he and Tristana are super safe because he can E backward and he can attack from such a long range anyways that you can usually farm pretty safely from a distance. So, super safe champion. His scaling is relatively low. He's a different kind of scaling, though. He's not going to be able to sit down and auto-attack somebody to death most of the time, but if he gets a ton of items, he can do kind of decent burst damage, especially if you go Trinity instead of Iceborne Gauntlet. But he does like just decent sort of poke over time. So if the rest of your team has a ton of damage, you know, if you have that Yasuo top lane and the Ryze mid lane and you know, the Kha'Zix jungle or something like that, maybe your team doesn't need to have a ton of damage, and so you could just play safe with Ezreal. Or you're just really scared of what they have. Maybe they have the Kha'Zix, maybe they have like a Kayn or something like that who's going to get on you, right? And then you just want to be able to go something like Ninja Tabi, Iceborne Gauntlet, and just try not to die and just do the best you can poke-wise. So there are situations where Ezreal can be okay. But his scaling damage compared to other AD carries most of the time is relatively low. And his reliability is also on the low side because you have to hit a lot of Qs and you have to dodge everything if you're playing Ezreal. If you ever get hit with skill shots, there's just no point in playing Ezreal. Because that's his whole thing, is you're trading a ton of damage in exchange for a ton of safety. And if you're not being safe anyways, if you're still dying all the time, then you might as well just play Twitch. Like, if you're dying more than 3 times as Ezreal in a game, then you might as well just be playing Twitch. Because at least at some point in the game, you'll have 4 items as Twitch, and then you can just show up and just win a team fight and win the game. So, unless you're dodging everything, don't play Ezreal. But if you can dodge everything, if you are really good with him, you know, he can still be pretty legit. His preferred position is forward if you can get there because he is safe, he can escape, and he can poke under tower, like I mentioned before. So if you can push, if you do have a Zyra or a Karma or something else that can push in lane, then that can be pretty good. Now, top 3 supports, you could put almost anything with him. Ideally, you don't want to put champions that are going to really like to get Ardent Sensor because he's not that great with it. He's okay. It does apply on hit to his Q, but he doesn't benefit very heavily from the attack speed. So I went with 3 different styles here, and it just depends on how you want to play Ezreal. He's pretty versatile. So if you do think you're going to be able to get to that forward position, if they have a tank support or something, if they have like a Tahm Kench and another champion that isn't that great early, like if they have a Tahm Kench and a like a Kai'Sa or something like that. Kai'Sa has some wave clear, I guess, with her Q as she levels it up, but just something where it's a tank support and you're going to be able to push him in, then you could run something like Bard to double down on adding extra pressure to the lane. And then also, if you get that forward position, then Bard can go roam and pick up his chimes pretty easily, and Ezreal can play safe. He can play back and just farm with his Qs while you're doing that. And so that makes him pretty good with roaming champions. So you could do it with Bard if you want to try to play Alistar and just roam middle and make plays off of that. If it's just going to be a farm off bottom, you can do that. So Ezreal is really good with champions. He's really good at like a 1v2 lane. So if the support's going to go roam and do something else, whether it's collecting chimes or trying to gank middle or whatever, Ezreal's pretty good for that. Pretty good at surviving. Soraka is another option if you're just going to get obliterated in the early game and you're going to be put into that defensive position. You just want to heal Ezreal through it. You can play Soraka. But yeah, and then that will give you some scaling later on if you have a pretty good tank line and you're just going to go for like a poke and tank with like Ezreal. So maybe your team comp is like Ezreal and a Xerath, and then you have a front line of like a Sejuani and an Ornn or something like that, and your goal is just to, you know, tank with the 2 tanks and then poke with Xerath and Ezreal, then Soraka's pretty good in that kind of comp where you can just heal up the tanks and just let the poke keep flowing. So that's an option. And then Zyra, as I mentioned before, if you want to do the push and poke option, then Zyra's pretty good. She can poke under tower. She has great wave clear. And she has enough damage to counteract Ezreal's lack of all-in damage later on in the game. So Zyra is who I usually pick if I have an Ezreal on my team, just to counteract sort of his weak early game and his relatively weak scaling. So they don't have any like killer combos. I guess if you all in somebody level 6 and Ezreal hits him with his ult, then that can lead to some kills. But it's not that they're great together. It's just that Zyra balances out a lot of Ezreal's weaknesses. So that's a pretty good option too. And then, as I said before, the classic like Karma is still pretty good with him as well. Jhin has a lot of lane pressure. He can push with his grenades very well early on. His 4th shot is really scary. People have to back up off of that. He has pretty high kill threat as well. Not quite as high as Draven, but pretty high. You know, if you have a damage support, if you have something like an Alistar and he combos somebody and then Jhin W's them and then walks up and 4th shots them, they're probably going to die. So Jhin can do a ton of damage early on. Has pretty good wave clear, pretty good pressure under tower. His safety is relatively low, though. It's a little bit higher than someone, I think, than someone like Draven. Maybe they are both on the same scale. It just depends on, you know, what's going on. But he does get that extra move speed off of his crit, especially later in the game. When he gets a lot of crit, he's going to be running around really fast. He does have the traps to help him out a little bit. He does have his W to, you know, stun somebody. And, you know, if the situation's really rough, then he can ult from a pretty far distance and still be relevant as well. So that's why I gave him just a little bit more safety, because he does have the long-range ult option, and he does get a lot of movement speed, especially later on in the game, to help him out. His scaling is okay. It's really good against squishies. It's bad against tanks. He doesn't get a lot of attack speed, but similar to Draven, he does have that potential to almost 2-shot people later on. I think that Draven does a little bit more raw damage later on off of a couple of just your auto-attacking twice. Now, if Jhin gets his 4th shot on somebody, you know, that's going to do a lot of damage, or just if he has a fully stacked Gensus or something, that's going to do a lot of damage. But I think most of the time, Draven's going to edge him just a little bit in terms of overall scaling, but he's still pretty good. He's pretty respectable. And his reliability I have on the low side. He is pretty hard to play. You have to land your those W's. You have to land your ult shots. You have to use your reload mechanic correctly in lane. Like, you have to, you know that you need to grenade something, know when you want to reload so that you don't miss CS. So it's kind of hard to CS with him. And you have all these skill shots that you need to be able to land, and you need to be positioning correctly because he doesn't have a flash or a dash to get him out of dangerous situations. So his reliability is definitely on the low side, although not as low as something like Draven. It's on par with something like Ezreal for different reasons. His preferred position, he likes it neutral, kind of like Draven. He likes to be able to kill people, although realistically, you can usually get to a forward position. If you want to go for a kill lane, you go for Alistar, really good pick. Zyra is also a good kill, but Zyra pushes as well if you want to do the push and poke under tower. And then Nami's just a pretty good solid pick as well. She doesn't have to get Ardent Sensor like the other enchanters. She can go into other things that can help him out. So she can go something like Redemption, Shirelia's if she wanted to, or Mikhail's if you needed to cleanse crowd control. She can go like Mikhail's, Redemption. So yeah, I think that's pretty the position for Jhin. So his game plan is you can either go for trying to pick people off and kill them in a neutral position, or you can go for push and poke under tower, kind of like a more versatile Caitlyn that's not quite as good at push and poke, as he has lower ranges and not as much zoning. He does have the traps to help him zone a little bit, but they aren't as good as Caitlyn traps. Okay, Kai'Sa, really hot right now. I suspect in the future, this is patch 8.8, I suspect in the future she's going to get nerfed down quite a lot. We'll see if she's good. I think Last Shadow LS made a really good point when I was watching one of his patch notes videos about Kai'Sa, in that I think that she's only really strong because of her numbers right now. Her kit isn't that amazing compared to some other kits out there. It's just her raw numbers are so high. that it makes her really strong. So we'll see in the future how it goes with Kai'Sa. But for right now, she's really hot, so I wanted to include her in here. She has relatively weak lane pressure. She doesn't do a lot of damage early without items. If you get isolated Q hits on somebody, you know, level 5 and beyond, you can do quite a bit of damage. So it's okay. Your kill threat relatively low, so you don't have a lot of push. It's neutral. You can push with your Q a little bit. You don't have a lot of kill threat. You're not very safe. You know, the best you can do is use your little hyper thing. I think it's her E, and like try to run away. So she's very vulnerable to getting ganked. She has to get pretty close to do her abilities. I think she has 525 attack range. So she's pretty dangerous. But her scaling is through the roof. When she gets a couple of items, she's definitely a pentakill type of champion. She does a ton of damage. And her reliability is pretty high because she's relatively easy to play. I mean, the only skill shot really is her W. You know, if you land the W, good. If not, whatever. You can still just run people down and just Q and auto-attack them, and they're probably going to die. So, pretty easy to play, pretty easy to execute compared to most champions, and really high scaling. So, that usually makes for a champion that's overpowered when they have very high scaling and reliability. But, so her early game is suspect. You can definitely exploit her early, but once she gets Death's Dance and Gensu's, even Death's Dance, really, she becomes a pretty serious threat. You know, preferred is neutral, and I say that because she doesn't want to go forward because she doesn't have a ton of escape. She doesn't have a lot of poke under tower. I guess you can poke with missiles while they're trying to last hit, which is decent. But I think just staying neutral in the lane, just so that you have the safety of your tower, you're not getting pushed in, but at the same time, you're not exposing yourself to ganks. Okay, so top 3 supports, just things that scale really well, mostly, that are going to get Ardent Sensor. She loves Ardent Sensor because she gets that on-hit with Gensu's a lot, and she gets a lot of attack speed off of her E. So, anyone that has really high scaling, that matches her late-game scaling, and anything that either gives AD or attack speed and can use Ardent Sensors, that's Janna, Lulu. And then Nami doesn't scale as hard as Janna or Lulu, but it does help her early-game weakness out a little bit, and Nami can still get Ardent Sensor and still scales pretty well. As well as Nami's on, like, pretty much every champion. Yeah, she is. Nami's on every AD carry right now, and Nami is the #1 support right now statistically, so that's why. We'll talk about Nami here in a little bit, but she's just so versatile with so many different champs. Okay, Kog'Maw. Yeah, we need to get moving here. Cog is a pretty good choice if your team needs AP damage. So if you have, like, 3 AD, if you have Yasuo, you know, Yasuo top lane, mid lane Zed, and, you know, jungle Kayn or something like that, Kog'Maw is a decent option because he does mostly magic damage off of his W. He has decent, respectable lane pressure, more than people think. He can push in pretty well. You have to respect him when he has his W up. He can do quite a lot early on, and he has a lot of range with that too. So he has kind of okay lane pressure, okay kill threat early on. He's very, very unsafe. He's probably one of the most unsafe champions in the game. All he can do is use his Void Ooze to try to slow somebody down and run away. So he is very unsafe, so he really needs somebody that can protect him. He has some of the highest scaling in the game still. So if he gets something like Gensu's, Wits End, Nashers, or something like that, he's just going to do a ton of damage. He's going to blow everybody up. And you can even go something like Blather and King if you want to on him lately. But I think that Gensu's Wits End is usually the best option because that gives him a lot of attack speed and that lowers his magic resist off of the Wits End. They did nerf Wits End almost specifically because of Cog a few patches ago, but it's still really solid, especially when you get double procs off of Gensu's. You can stack it a lot faster than most people think. And that does give him some protection too by giving him the magic resist. So his scaling is through the roof, and he's very reliable for the most part. You know, his positioning is a little tougher than some other ones because he's so dangerous, but for the most part, you're just pressing W and right-clicking people. So it's, you know, there's not a lot of mechanics. Yeah, hitting your R to execute some people, that's definitely something, for sure, to distinguish good cogs from bad cogs. But in most fights, the fights are going to be won or lost based on just, do you press W and right-click, and does your team help peel for you? So his preferred position is defensive. He's one of the few champions that wouldn't mind getting pushed into his tower. Neutral is okay as well. You don't want to push forward with him, though, because he's so easy to gank. He just has a huge bullseye on his head, and everybody knows that. So usually you want to take a neutral or a defensive position, and then just the scalers. So you've got Janna, Lulu, Nami. Lulu is the best, particularly because she adds the on-hit with picks when she puts the W, or when she puts the E on him, and then the W gives him a lot of extra attack speed. So because he's getting a lot of attack speed anyways, and he's going to get Wit's End, which is going to lower magic resist, then Pix is going to do even more damage because he's getting all of the extra attacks in there, and you're doing all that extra magic damage with Pix. And then also, of course, you can use Polymorph if you need to. You can use your ultimate to protect him. So Lulu Cog is an old school peanut butter and jelly combination that's really, really strong. Peanut butter jelly time, that's right, dear. And then Nami can help out. She scales, she can get Ardent Sensor, but she also is very lane dominant. And she can even heal even if you're in a losing lane. She has one of the best heals early game, especially after the Sona nerf. So, you know, if you just have to sit there and heal, you can do that. I mean, obviously Soraka is the best healer, but Soraka is a lot more dangerous. So Nami is a relatively safe version that's very versatile. And being able to slow people down lets Cog stick to people as well, so he can land more of his W's, have a little bit more effective uptime. Okay, we're gonna blow through these a bit faster because we need to get to support and try to finish this up. I picked 10 because I know somebody would be like, but what about this champion? What about that champion? Not Tyler, obviously, the donator for this, but I know there's always that one guy in comments that's always like, well, you forgot about this champion, or what about this combination? It's like, dude, there are thousands of combinations that you can do between these different champions, right? I mean, even if you think about like top 10 supports and top 10 AD carries, like 10 to the 10th, I think would be what that, I don't know if that's exactly how you would do it, but there's a lot of combinations, a lot. So we can't cover them all. It's probably not 10 to the 10th, but anyways, it's way too many to cover, so I just picked some that I could. Okay, Misfortune wants to pressure early, has good poke with her Q. She does apply pressure to tower. She's almost always in the forward position. She can Q, has good lane pressure, has decent kill threat. Her Q does quite a bit of burst early on, and you can slow people with your E. You know, maybe that kill shot. I'm going to go ahead and make it a 3, because it's not as high as some of the other people like Jen or Draven, but it's decent kill threat. She's mostly poke, though. Relatively unsafe. She only has her movement speed. She doesn't have any flashes or dashes. Pretty low scaling overall. Now, yes, if she gets all of her items and just gets to channel, like, the Dream, you know, a full 5-person ult in a team fight, yes, she does a lot of damage. But in terms of just, like, raw, reliable, walk up and just keep auto-attacking people in fights, she's going to lose that. So if she has a lot of help, if she's able to just channel a full ult in a fight, yes, she does a lot of damage. But I just feel like it's a different kind of scaling from other AD carry scaling. Then as far as reliability, she is pretty reliable for the most part. I put it as a 5 because you can just always just hang out really far in the back and just press R in a team fight and do a lot of damage. So she's one of the better, especially in low elo. I got auto-filled AD carry. I'm going to play Misfortune. So usually plays forward. Nami's good for the reasons I've described before. Good early game pressure, great utility, decent scaling. And then with Thresh, if you land that hook, you can kill people with her early on. Thresh could be with any of the aggressive people up here as well. He's just a bit more conditional. So like Thresh could be great with Draven and Jen as well. I just went with the Alistar in those situations, but Thresh could be in there too. And then Zyra's pretty good as well. Just that great combo with your ult plus Misfortune's ult. Awesome teamfight presence and doubles down on the pushing and early game damage. Okay, Twitch, always a powerhouse in solo queue, and they have nerfed him kind of, sort of, recently, but it really wasn't enough. He's very good. He just has a garbage laning phase. So he's getting overshadowed right now by Kai'Sa. But once Kai'Sa gets nerfed a few times, then I think Twitch will resurface as one of the top AD carries. I think he's already, like, pretty good. I mean, he still has a 51.2 win rate, so he's still one of the highest win rate supports, or AD carries, but yeah, Kai'Sa is just doing kind of what he does better right now, which is she hits her power spike faster. Really at death stance, she's going to do a lot more damage. And yeah, her itemization is just a little bit better. Twitch still has to go like Hurricane, Infinity Edge, Static Shiv. So it takes him, you know, really like 2 items, maybe 2.5 before he can really start pressuring. So he's terrible in lane. He really can't do a lot. Like, yeah, he might be able to get some kills if someone just sits in your poison. So it's possible, but he really doesn't push that fast at all most of the time. So really low kill threat, really low lane pressure. He's kind of safe compared to some other people, but not as safe as others. Because he can go invisible and run out of a fight if they don't have a pink ward, and most people won't carry extra pink wards for him. So he's kind of safe in a different way, but not reliably safe like Ezreal or Tristana or something like that. So he's kind of got this pseudo safety, but his scaling and his reliability are through the roof. Like when Twitch gets to 3 items, you know he's going to be a powerhouse. He's pretty much just a right-click champion. You just have to be smart about when you open up on him, where you position. So there is some skill in that, but he's very, very reliable. You know he's dangerous. You know he's going to have a huge impact on the game if he gets kills. Okay, Varus is kind of just your standard all-arounder, as you can see from the stats. Like, he has okay lane pressure. He can push in. He has okay kill threat early on. He has some abilities that do some decent damage, like his W, and then, of course, his passive, if you proc that. He has nice range. He has 575 range, so he has some decent sort of poke in lane. He's not as safe as other options, especially pre-6. He doesn't have any dashes or flashes to get him out of situations, but he does have high range. So he's a little bit more safe than, you know, something like a Draven, but a little bit less safe than other options. His scaling is okay. If he gets a lot of items, he can still do a lot, especially if you go for like that AP build. You can definitely blow people up. But it's not going to be as high as something like Twitch or Kaisa, so it's like okay scaling. And he's kind of reliable. You know, a lot of his stuff are just auto attacks and point click abilities, but you really do have to hit that ult. That's kind of the one thing that makes him a little more difficult, is it's a very slender skill shot, and it's easy to miss if you don't have a lot of practice on him. And then the best positions are going to be neutral for him, and then just Alistar, Nami, Zyra. So good early pressure with Nami and Zyra. Alistar if you want to go for that level 6 all-in kill threat. And then Twitch is the same thing as Kaisa, basically. Just Janna, Lulu, Nami. Just go for the scaling. Play defensive. Then finally, Xayah, good pressure. She can push in with her passive, with her Q. They did nerf that a little bit, but she still has pretty good early game wave clear. Decent kill threat if you have a CC champion like an Alistar or something like that on your team. Or if Rakan lands his W and you get your root on him with your E, then he can have a lot of kill threat. Fairly safe. If people try to run at you, you can root them with your E. You do have your ultimate, so that keeps you fairly safe. She scales pretty heavily. If she gets like 3 items, if she gets Essence Reaver, Infinity Edge, and then like Rapid Fire Cannon, she just does a ton of damage, ton of team fight damage. It's really hard to get to her to kill her, so she's still really strong. And then her reliability is on the lower side because you have to position your feathers correctly, just know when to ult correctly. So she's slightly harder to play than sort of your average. But she's going to be pretty decent. So she did get a nerf this patch. So yeah, she's down about under 50, but I still think she's pretty good in the right hands, but she is a bit harder to play than some others, and that's why she's down that much on the reliability. Okay, we're going to have to fly through support, I suppose. This is mostly focusing from the AD carry side. I do a support tier list every patch, so if you want to know more about which supports are hot right now and what I recommend on them in terms of runes, items, which champions they're good with, what their position is in the meta, then be sure to check that video out. I'll give you a lot more details, but for now we're just going to kind of fly through this, and if you want more, then, you know, you can look at the supports. The support AD tier list, or AD, the support tier list, I mean to say. Okay, so with Alistar, good, decent lane pressure, bad wave clear, but he does have a lot of threat. People have to back up and respect him a lot of times. Ton of kill threat. If you do land that combo on somebody, especially a squishy champion, it doesn't have a lot of escapes. You know, you land that combo on a Kaisa or a Twitch or something like that. He does have a lot of kill threat with most AD carries. He's not very safe. He has virtually no escapes. He is very tanky. He can headbutt people away, but realistically, if you get caught out warding or if you engage in the wrong situation, you're probably going to die. He has no scaling whatsoever in his kit. Pretty much, he's the same thing all game, which is basically WQ, press your E, try to get that stun, and that's it. So his numbers really don't matter. You just get a bunch of utility stuff that helps you do that, and that's pretty much it. So he has virtually no scaling. He has no armor ratios, no magic resist ratios. His AP ratios, you just are okay, but you never get AP on him. So virtually no scaling. And his reliability is on the lower side because if you don't engage properly, then he's going to be really bad, but he can be very good if you do engage properly. So he's on the dangerous side to play, and it requires coordination from your team to go in whenever you engage. And if they don't do that, or if you engage in the wrong spots, then he's going to be pretty bad. So he's a little bit lower on the reliability scale. He likes neutral positions, so he can go for all-in kills. If you're in a forward position, he's just going to sit there and watch because he can't auto-attack towers safely. He can't do any kind of poke when they're under tower. So really, your best position is to be neutral or maybe even defensive sometimes because that'll allow you, if a gank comes in, to come out and try to kill somebody. But most of the time, he just wants to hang out in the middle of the lane with the AD carry and just sit there and look scary. And if they step out of position, maybe go for an all-in kill every now and then. So he's best with champions that can go for those all-in kills. So like Draven, Jhin, Xayah, early on, they have great CC abilities that they can chain together with his. Well, not Draven. Draven just kills him. But like Jhin and Xayah have good CC abilities. Caitlyn would be another one that's okay. Although, once again, Caitlyn likes to push and go forward, and Alistar can't do a lot other than sit there and watch Caitlyn. He does have Peel, you know, if the jungler tries to come in. But I would say there are better choices with Caitlyn most of the time. But he's okay. He's all right with Kate. So if you like tanks, he's one of the better tanks right now. He does have a self-heal in lane, so he can sustain through poke. He is very scary. He's very good against a lot of the squishy enchanters if you can get a hold of him right now. He's just going to get outscaled by him later on in the game. Okay. Bard. I always get asked about Bard. He's very popular on the channel, so let's throw him in here. You know, he's a popular, like, one-trick type of champion. I would say Bard does apply some pretty good lane pressure. He has some okay wave clear, especially once he gets the upgrade on his meeps where it does the extra damage on the splash. He has pretty high kill threat. If he lands a stun and he's taking Electrocute and Ignite early on, then he can do a ton of damage early on. So kind of close to Zyro level damage early on if he lands it. It's a lot less reliable than a Zyro route, but if you do land the stun, he can definitely kill some people. He's not very safe. He can, if he's close to a wall, of course, he could magical journey through the wall, and then if they try to follow, he can pin them with his Q. But, you know, maybe I'll put safety on 3 because there are a lot of walls on the map, and you can get through them if your magical journey is available. So we'll put him on a 3, but if he gets crowd controlled, he is very squishy. He can get blown up. And he does have to get pretty close. He only has 500 auto attack range. So that puts him in range of champions like Alistar and makes it a bit scarier against Thresh and Leona and Blitzcrank and stuff like that. So, you know, he's about average on safety, I think. Maybe slightly above when he's roaming. His scaling is fairly low. He has no real scaling in his kit other than his meeps. So, like, his ult and his E don't have any scaling with anything. His W is, you don't get a lot of points in that usually, so it doesn't matter. His Q has like a 0.7, I think, AP ratio, so it's okay. His meeps have like a 0.3, so that's okay, I guess. But his itemization scaling is relatively weak overall, but his meep damage and utility does stack up a lot as the game goes on, so he's a different kind of scaling. And his reliability is going to be on the low side. It requires you hitting your stuns on your Q, you knowing when to roam properly so you can get your chimes without your AD carry dying, and you hitting those really tough ults. So trying to decide who do I ult, who do I cut off. So try to make the decision what you need to do with your ult in a fight, and then also actually doing it, and then having your teammates cooperate with that. So that makes him really hard to use. Okay, so his preferred lane position, he likes it forward, so he likes to be with champions that like to push. So Kate, Draven, Jhin, so that allows him to roam and go get his chimes while they're pushed in. And then these champions have enough kill threat if he lands that stun to kill them. So Caitlyn can trap him if he stuns him. Draven can blow him up. Jhin can chain it with his W. So all of these have kill threat on his stun. And they all can push into tower pretty easily. That lets him roam. So that's pretty good. So his game plan is just to push in, see if you get some kills in lane, go pick up as many chimes you can, drop a lot of vision around the map while you're doing that, and just scale and turn into a pretty good utility type of champion later on. He does have options too. He can go damage if your team needs damage. Like in theory, you could build something like a Nashor's Tooth and whatever else damage items you want, but he can also, and more likely most people build him, which is stuff like, you know, Redemption, Shirelia's, Locket, stuff like that. Although I don't like Locket right now. But a lot of people just build him kind of like an enchanter, even though he doesn't benefit very heavily from plus healing and shielding. Okay, Janna, historically the most successful support of all time. You know, she has very low pressure in lane. She doesn't wave clear that well. She does have a long auto attack range of 550, so she can auto attack the wave and kind of push it. You can, in theory, use your Tornado fully charged to do some damage to minions, but that's kind of dangerous to do depending on the lane. So she has okay, but subpar, you know, lane pressure. Kill threat is almost non-existent. You know, if they want to fight you in your own minion wave, sure, you might be able to get some kills, but your all-in threat early on is very low. But she's extremely safe. She moves very quickly. She has a lot of disengage. She has really, really high scaling because of her shield and her ult. And then she's very reliable. Like, you know exactly what you're getting with Janna most of the time. There is some skill expression, you know, knocking people out of the air with the tornado or your ultimate. So there's that, but she's almost always going to be a really powerful force. Even if she messes up a couple of her abilities, even if she messes up her item build or her runes or whatever, she's still going to be relevant in most games. So she is the go-to support. If you're auto-filled, definitely you should play Janna. Okay, so preferred position forward. She likes to go forward. She can land those autos on the tower. She is relatively safe. She can go ward and get back to lane pretty quickly because she's very fast. So she's great. And then she's best paired with the heavy scalar champs, so like the Kai'Sa, the Kog'Maw, and the Twitch. Gonna be really good. Okay, Lulu, kind of similar to Janna, but has more lane pressure at the cost of a lot less safety. So you can push pretty well with your Q in lane. It's just your auto attacks. You get the extra damage from your picks. You can harass people under tower with your EQ combo. Autos, you can auto the tower, so she can apply a lot more pressure. She has a bit more kill threat in lane. It's unlikely you're going to kill them in one rotation, but if you EQ them a couple of times, then they're going to have to back up, or you will kill them the next time. So she does quite a surprising amount of damage early. Kind of low on the safety scale. She can W herself and run away, but realistically, if somebody catches you, you're probably going to die. She's very squishy, and her base movement speed is pretty low. Her scaling is through the roof, just like Janna. You know, putting your Whimsy on a high-quality AD carry, especially when you have Ardent Sensors, just going to give them a ton of damage. And then her reliability is a lot lower than Janna because you have to make the decision whether you want to polymorph the enemy or Whimsy your ally, whether you want to shield your ally or damage the enemy. And you can misclick these really easily in complicated fights where everyone's just kind of piled up. Then you can easily try to shield your ally and accidentally shield the enemy, or try to polymorph that assassin and accidentally Whimsy your AD carry because of the way once those hitboxes start overlapping. Unless you're clicking on the portraits down in the bottom for the shield, and you can't even click on the portraits for polymorph. You can't click on enemy portraits because that's not in the UI for some reason. So you just have to try to click on the enemy, and if they are just right directly on top of your ally, if their hitboxes are overlapping, you know, it's very easy to accidentally hit the wrong thing. Or even if you hit the right spot and it's just overlapping, you know, I'm not sure how Rito decides that when the two hitboxes are overlapping, which one gets the priority. I have no idea. But there's definitely some mechanical misplays. Even though all of her abilities are point click, except for her Q, there's definitely the possibility to mess those up a lot. Either through your mistake or through a targeting mistake of Rito's client. Either way. So preferred lane position is forward. She likes to push and pressure under tower, and she's great with the scalers just like Janna. All right, Nami, best overall, well-rounded support. As you can see from up here, she's pretty good with every AD carry. She's a great blind pick. Provides excellent lane pressure. Has unparalleled trading, small trades in lane because you damage somebody with W and it heals you, and you get to keep two other powerful abilities in your back pocket. So you get to keep your bubble and you get to keep your E. So whenever you trade with W, if they try to go on you or go on your AD carry, you still have bubble. You still have E. So with some other champions, if you try to go for the full trade, so like with Lulu, for example, if you go for her trade, you have to E and then Q off of them. So it takes two abilities to do your full harassment combo. Then all you have left is your W if they go on top of you because two of your abilities are on cooldown. Or if you are someone like a Sona, and you're trying to harass and heal yourself, you have to use your Q to harass, and then if you want to heal yourself, you have to use W. So that's 2 of your abilities on cooldown for that harassment. So nobody quite does it like Lulu. I mean, Soraka is somebody who kind of, you know, is a one-person harass and heal with her Q, but it's a lot harder to hit that Q, right? Nami is just point-click W, and then you have 2 good abilities in your back pocket, and virtually no other champion has that, where you can still trade back, you can still all-in fight if they try to attack you while this is on cooldown. And so her scaling is not as heavy as someone like a Lulu or a Janna, because Janna gives AD to your AD carry with her shield, Lulu gives attack speed with her whimsy, Nami doesn't give anything extra other than a little bit of movement speed, but her AP does scale really well on her, and plus healing and shielding because of her wave. She just has a lot of CC. You know, she's got her wave to knock people out of things, she's got her bubble, she can slow people down with her E, she can speed your allies up with all of her abilities. So she's just a pretty good, well-rounded pick. So excellent lane pressure, decent kill threat, pretty safe because she can play from very far back with her wave and her E. She can peel really well. She has pretty good base movement speed. I think it's 335, and she can speed herself up with all of her abilities to escape. And she has CC to knock people out, so she can bubble people trying to chase her. She can ult people trying to chase her. It's not quite as safe as Janna, but pretty safe as far as enchanters go. And then the scaling and the reliability are fairly low. You have to hit your bubbles every now and then. You have to land good ults, but in lane, if you're just going up and trading with your W, you're going to be a force in lane. So she prefers the forward position, and she can go with a lot of different champions. She can go for the kill threat with Draven. She can go for the push lane with Caitlyn, or she can go for the kind of defensive lane where you just sort of heal early on and then have utility later on if you get paired with a losing lane like a Twitch. Okay, and then we'll just fly through the rest of these at the very end here. So Rakan, pretty good, low lane pressure, low kill threat, but he's very safe, has really high scaling, great ratios on his shields. Average reliability, you know, pressing R and then W onto a single target is pretty easy to do, but learning how to bounce around the fight with your E and just learning all of his different combinations you can do with W and E and Q can take a little bit of practice. He likes the neutral lane position. You can go forward. He can't harass that much under tower. He can throw some Qs, but his auto attack range is really low. It's not safe to auto the tower, so you don't get a lot out of pushing with him. You can go into a defensive position if you want to, but his healing is kind of suspect. You can land your Qs and heal a little bit, but he can get poked out by some of the other enchanters, so his laning is not that strong, but he does have really good engage, and he has pretty good scaling later on. So he's best with Xayah, obviously, because of their W interaction with each other. Xayah's W. With Varus, because you can engage and he can follow it up with CC, or vice versa. Just chain CC it, or Misfortune where you CC and she gets to channel her ult. It's a pretty good combo there. Soraka has really good lane pressure. She can push really easily with her Q. Does a lot of damage to minions. She can harass people very well under towers. She lands Qs. She can auto-attack the tower, so that's great. If they don't have any all-in pressure, she can definitely push in. So she'd be good with someone like a Caitlyn for that reason. Very low kill pressure, doesn't do a ton of damage in lane. Extremely unsafe. The only thing she can really do to try to escape is land a Q on somebody and run away. She can't heal herself. She can't really shield herself really quickly, that is. I mean, she can land Q and heal a little bit over time, but she doesn't have something like a Janna who can shield herself, or, you know, a Nami who can heal herself reliably for, like, a pretty big burst. She just doesn't have that anymore. Her scaling is through the roof, though, so if it gets to late game and you get your, you know, your Mikhail's Redemption Ardent Sensor, you're just going to heal everybody up. So she's very good later on if the enemy team doesn't have hard engage and you have good poke and they have poke. So she's best in poke wars because she just heals and sustains people so well. As long as they don't have a lot of all-in, she's great. So preferred lane position is forward. Although, once again, that's dangerous depending on the matchup. Maybe it should be neutral, but whatever. Top 380 carries, probably Kai'Sa, Kog, and Twitch. And I say this because she can heal them through tough lanes. And then it may not matter, even if you get focused out every fight in the mid game by assassins and killed, then your AD carry will be so powerful if it's Twitch, Cog, or Kai'Sa that it probably won't matter. So as long as you can get these champions through the early game just by healing them while they just sit under their tower and farm pretty much, then you're probably doing most of your job by doing that. So, and then if they don't kill you later on, then that's a bonus. If they don't have a lot of hard engage, that's a bonus. It does make it a little harder because she can't get Warmogs comfortably now after they nerfed the health to it. It was never like a must-buy item, but it was a nice option as a third or a fourth item before on Soraka if they had a lot of assassins. This makes it a bit harder now. Okay, Tarek's another one. Very low lane pressure. He can't really clear waves at all. He has decent kill threat. If you do land your stun on somebody, you might be able to kill him, but it's kind of hard to land, especially without your flash. So he's decent in that respect. He's pretty unsafe. He has no escapes. He just has to try to run away and hope they don't kill him. I mean, he can maybe stun him while he's running away, but it's very difficult to get away. Usually if they catch you in a bad position, you're going to die as Tarek unless you have backup close to you. However, his scaling is really high, giving your entire team invulnerability is a very strong perk, obviously. And then just being able to just chain your heal throughout the entire fight, just auto, heal, auto, heal. And just having all of your cooldowns up a lot because of that. So being able to get off a lot of stuns, a lot of heals, a lot of shields in fights. And he himself, in the middle of a fight, is not susceptible to getting assassinated. So like if Zed goes on him, Zed's probably not going to kill him. Versus if Zed goes on Lulu, even if you have people around you. Well, Lulu's a bad example. Lulu's probably going to live as well. But if Zed goes on like a Soraka or something, he's going to be much more likely to kill her than he will be to kill Tarek. Okay, so he's okay. He likes neutral lane position because he's too dangerous and he doesn't gain anything from going forward. So his top 3 AD carries would be just like Kai'Sa, Cog, Twitch, so just try to scale for the late game. Thresh is the final one here. He does apply some lane pressure. I'll say a 3. I'll bump him up a little bit to a 3 because he does have that threat of the hook. He does have the threat of the flay, but he doesn't have very good wave clear. He does have his flay he can use if he needs to. He does have pretty high kill threat. If he lands that hook, you know, there's a decent chance you'll be able to get a kill or some summoners in lane. He's relatively safe depending on how you play him. So if you play him pretty far back and you're just fishing for hooks and just keeping your lantern available to bail people out of bad situations, then he can be pretty safe. And he can use his box and his flay also to slow people down to maybe escape. So he's not as safe as some of the champions out there, but he's safer than most other potential engaged tanks. His reliability is very low. He's the hardest support in the game to play, and he requires coordination from your team. So if your team doesn't follow up your hook when you take it, then it's going to be bad. If you land a hook and throw your lantern on somebody and then engage, half the time they won't take it. Half the time they won't take the lantern anyways. So that makes it really hard to function with him in solo queue. But if you're on point with a team that does the stuff, he's going to be good. So he's much, much better at higher elo brackets for those reasons. So yes, it is harder to hit hooks on like challenger level players, but if you do hit a hook, then people are going to follow up on it. If you do throw a lantern, people will take it. So, you know, he gets a lot better as you move up. So top 3 AD carries with him are Caitlyn, Draven, Jhin. So Caitlyn's good because if you ever land the hook, she can trap, and that's almost certain death. Draven and Jhin are similar. They just apply a lot of pressure early. You can get a lot of kills with him early, and his ability to throw that lantern makes up for their lack of safety in different situations. So I think those are probably the best with him. And then finally we have Zyra. Highest lane pressure in class. She has really good zone with her plants. She has really good wave clear with her E. She can harass under tower really well. She has 575 auto attack range, so she can hit the tower. She can auto attack people. Ton of pressure. Ton of kill threat, some of the highest in class, really, really high burst damage if she lands the E on somebody and lands plants on them. So the only other person who might even have a little bit more kill pressure than her early on would be someone like maybe Bard and Alistar with the kill threat can kind of get close, but I still think that she's going to deal a lot more, especially at level 6. She is very, very unsafe. She's one of the most unsafe supports out there. Yeah, you can land your root on somebody or maybe slow them with a slow plant, but for the most part, if you get caught, you're dead. She has pretty slow movement speed. No escape, so super dangerous. Her scaling is pretty high. You know, if you get to that, like, 3-item build, it's just the build is expensive. But if you get to it, you can completely delete people later in the game. Then her reliability is fairly low because you can get caught out, you can get killed. If you miss your roots, it's really bad. if you know, don't land your combos correctly, it's really bad. So she does have a higher skill cap than some of the other supports floating around out there, but she does have a lot of lane pressure and kill threat. So anyone that wants that, the Jhin, the Draven, the Caitlyn, she's going to be really good with that. She likes the forward position. Okay, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this, and thanks again to Tyler for the very generous donation. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time. Have a good day.